Hey guys, so I'm going to get started on our week 3 discussion. I kind of got a whole bunch of notes here, so probably not going to look up at the camera a whole bunch. Um, but let me silence my phone. Okay, so going into the questions on the first one, what are the thinking and behavior goals? Thinking goals, they talked about how she needs to not isolate herself, um, and that she needs to talk with her counselor about ways to feel good about being alone. And then, just the two things. And then the behavior goals, continuing going to her meetings, and then trying to let go of her ex. Those are her two goals, even though she says that she is not ready to really let go of him yet. She's working her way there. Um, and so that's 4 goals that I got out of that conversation. Um, Now, the second question of what theory is being used in the video, I narrowed this down to more person-centered therapy. There was, I didn't see a lot of specific interventions being used to kind of help change any behavior. It seemed like both of them, the therapist was more kind of along the ride with the client, and he was there kind of not so much as like a director, but more of sort of a guide through some things. They're with her, not really pushing a whole lot. Like they talked about how she doesn't like to be pushed if she's not ready. Whereas I think with cognitive and REBT, that would be there's a little more push on those two therapies to really change behavior. Whereas this therapist seemed to be kind of going along with her and doing things at her pace. And that's very much kind of person-centered therapy. Um, so, and it sounds like they're really trying to move more from a psychological needs more than like physical, like behavior. And so, and she has this almost incongruence to for why she's doing certain things. And it has to do that that feeling of needing to be attached to someone, be in a relationship. That seems like it's more like conditions of worth have led to the behavior of not wanting to be alone, needing to be in a relationship, and then having a hard time letting go of relationships. Moving on. And then I wrote down about how they talked about finding other sources of stimulus, things that would, and that's where I kind of got a little tied into, is this more cognitive, like behavior therapy? Because they're looking for other things that would stimulate that condition or that moving into that more congruent side of life. But and then there was with person-centered therapy, they talk about how people that have incongruencies are not open to new experiences. And in their the short part of this conversation, they talked about how putting herself into new situations, not isolating herself, getting out into different experiences. That's how I kind of interpreted that part there. And then the other one was one of the tenets of person-centered counseling, where there's an unconditional positive regard on the part of the therapist toward the client. And even though the therapist could have thought, okay, you really need to push yourself here. You know, you know, you've got to do some things here to move from that isolation, or not to move from isolation, sorry, but you really need to move into letting this person go. And she wasn't ready. Um, but even with that, where many people would be very judgmental, like, why can't you just let him go? He was very positive in that, and that, it's okay. You're going to get to that point, um, and so there was there's no condition there. Like, you let it go, or I'm going to look at you negatively. He just still had that positive regard for her, no matter what. Um, and then another tenet of counselors being very empathetically understanding of their internal frame of reference, and communicating that to the client. Sorry, I'm reading notes. I saw a lot of that with him in there too. So those are kind of the things that really stood out to me, as this being more of a person-centered therapist or therapy session. And then question 3, how would you use this approach in your work as a school counselor? So I see using person-centered therapy for those kids that have some of the incongruencies that she has, the feelings of isolation and attaching themselves to relationships so they don't feel alone. And I work middle school, and I honestly I see that a lot, not just in 8th grade, but really down in 6th grade too. I saw that a couple of times this past year. And then any of that, the negative self-worth. So I think, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So this is why I'm on the wrong page. But yeah, using that to help the kids feel worthy, and that they have dignity, and that they have respect. And I think that would be, that one's definitely needed at my level on my campus, that level of respect and have kids having dignity, because we have a lot of kids that are brought up without any respect from the adults in their life, and so when they come to us and we are respectful with them, they don't recognize it. They're just on that defense, having just that automatic defense of, you're gonna respect me. I'm like, well, just did. And so I think using this to help with kids that have those incongruencies. And then I actually found, to share this with y'all, I was just started printing it, but there is a resource that I found. It's only like 38 pages, and it's basically just a little handbook. It's on personalizingeducation.org, but it's how to use person-centered counseling and solutions-based counseling. So find that. I've barely looked into it, but it does have several activities with it that you can use. But then it also has an essay portion to talk about both tenets and how to use it and everything as well. So there's that resource for you. So, and that was personalizingeducation.org. And then, so the last question of the 3 theories from this week, which do you see as being most effective at your grade level? I think overall as a campus, or even grade level, overall whole group, small group, that person-centered is fantastic. I think with kids, and I think in my mind as I've been working, we have a lot of kids that really need some behavior help. Most of it stemming from the ADHD standpoint, where there's a disconnect between what their kids are feeling. Some are medicated, some are not medicated, some are identified, a lot of them are not. And then misunderstandings from teachers, and not knowing how to handle those things in class, or help do things that are more long lasting. I know we're all sick and tired of giving out little prizes and stuff for positive behavior because we're not seeing lasting effects of that. And so I think with those, finding those kids, identifying those students, even doing maybe some small groups somewhere in there, but using some of the behavior therapies, the REVs or the brain part, what's the other one? Yep, I forgot the name of it, and it's right in front of me. Yeah, the behavior therapy and the REV therapy, using some aspects of those, if there are some interventions in there, would also work as well. But I think overall, I see using more of a person-centered therapy techniques for me. So that is my video. Hopefully y'all can hear me. It was my microphone was acting up a little bit earlier, so hopefully y'all hear me.